What's going on? Hey, we here.
We good, baby. How y'all living, man? It's another episode of the Gawdscast, bringing you that football knowledge like a fiend needs crack, baby. We got that. We got some real knowledge here for you guys. Got a dope-ass show. We're going to be going over the stacked AFC West, breaking it down, answering the questions that you guys are going to have on that, as well as something that's often overlooked in the fantasy community today, which is auction drafts. We've been getting a lot of feedback, a lot of questions on auction drafts, people talking about they've never seen any content about that, and they do have a point, right? So, and as always, you guys keep those questions coming in because we'll be answering those live throughout the entire cast. And yeah, let's get to it. You know, it's me, P. You know, it's my man, Jay. No Dan today, but that's all gravy. We still got you guys' back.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Excited, man. Like, I feel like, I was going to take over that host. I just been doing all these damn shows, bro. I can't quit it, bro. I can't quit it. But this AFC West, bro, I mean, just with all the new changes, Javonte Adams is there now. Russ Wilson is there now. Tyreek Hill is gone now. So there's a lot of new weapons, new things to talk about, bro.
Hell, a lot of, with new players come a bunch of new fantasy impacts as well. So we got you guys covered on that. But check this out. Before we dive into all that, that's a whole lot of stuff to cover. Let's go ahead and hop into the strategies for auction drafts.
Yeah.
But first question I got here for you. Why do you think auction drafts aren't as publicized? And how many auction drafts are you in?
So typically I'll do like 1 or 2 auctions per year. And I think the reason why the fantasy community hasn't yet embraced auction drafts is because it seems difficult, right? Standard drafts is just easy. I get my spot, I make my pick. There's enough information for me to consume to where if I know if I got to pick Dalvin or Austin Eckler, I can make that decision. But if I'm in an auction draft, now I have to think about, okay, how much money am I spending per player? How much should I allocate? Or if something happens and I don't want to get stuck with the value, like is my whole draft like just messed up now? So I think there's a lot of things that go into the auction that make it more strategic for players who have played for a long time, for players who understand values, who can quickly do math as well. But there's a lot of casual, I'm not trying to knock on anybody. There's a lot of casual fantasy players who don't want to go through the depths of finding what value I should take a player at, or if I should spend the extra money on a certain player. So I respect that. But for me, I love auction because I think that's where my expertise shines. I feel like I'm able to find true gems at the value and understand who I want to spend on. I love being able to get 2 top players that I value that other people don't.
Facts. I mean, you hit it on the point. And another reason why I think that like us as content creators don't necessarily cover auction values or auction strategies is because like how do you put a value on somebody and say, hey, like this is the amount that you should invest on them? Like it's hard to do that versus like snake drafts. It's like, okay, yeah, 1.6 you should be drafting either these 3 players. But an auction draft is so, there's so many different ways that you can go about that. It's hard to be like, of your $100 budget, you should allot 47% of that to this player and break, you know what I mean? Because it can go so many different ways. And speaking of going so many different ways, like what strategies do you have for auction? Like, how do you go into an auction? Like, what's your approach?
Yeah, before you get into that, bro, if you guys are watching, you guys have any questions about auctions, now's the time. We're going to dial into this thing for the next 10, 15 minutes at least. So if you got questions about auction values, whatever, we'll answer them 1,000% right now. But you made a hell of a point because it's not like a mock draft where a mock draft is, okay, the player run happened, I can bounce back and get value here. It's more like if you have different people in your league, your auction draft is going to be 1,000% different. We've had leagues where our auction values where guys were spending $100 on players. We've also been in leagues where there's been nobody over $50. So it's way different than any other experience. It takes a longer time to draft too because every player is bid on. But it's well worth it at the end of the day. My auction strategy is to try to go in and get 2 top players, like not necessarily 2 top 5 players, but I want to get 2 key hogs on my team, players that I like that I can get at a lesser value than other players. So for instance, I'm not going to go outspend for Justin Jefferson in an auction draft because I feel like the price is going to be way too high. Everybody wants to get him. I'm avoiding the hot name players, the CeeDee Lambs of the world, the Travis Etiennes, the ones you're seeing all over TikTok. I'm probably not bidding on them. I'm sifting for gold. Who do I feel like can get top value for less dollar? Like Saquon Barkley to me would fit in that mold because he's going back into the second. He has higher end potential to me. Dalvin Cook is another player I would probably get at a very good price as opposed to paying for Jonathan Taylor or paying for some of the other higher names up there, right? So I'm always sifting. How can I find value at later positions and still get elite talent? Devontae Adams. Like, I think I can get wide receiver 1 production out of him without paying. So it's really up to your draft, but try to look for the names that not everybody else is going for is my personal, goal.
Yeah, one thing you hit on, you're trying to look for value. Like, what does that look like? Like, how do you determine when you're looking at, like, let's say somebody you referenced, Dalvin Cook, right?
Right.
If Dalvin Cook is up to bid and there still is Jonathan Taylor on the board, there still are, other running backs that are, CMC still on the board. Like, at what point are you like, well, this probably ain't value? And let's say you have just $100 budget just to keep it even numbers.
Yeah. So I look at it also as like there's tiers in there as well. So the more talent that's left, the easier it is for me to be like, I'm not going to overbid on a player. So for instance, if you're talking about Dalvin Cook and there's still all the running backs left, I'm not going to go overpay for Dalvin Cook. If I have him kind of tiered off at like he's worth $20, he's worth $25, he's worth $30, I'm not going to reach over those standard necessarily numbers that I have to go get Dalvin Cook or any other player. I'm going to wait and kind of see how the draft falls. And the less talent that's there, the more sniperish I'm getting. Like, at some point, everybody's going to have a top running back and they're not going to want to pay. So Joe Mixon's going to fall to me for $15 because other people are scared to pay for him because they're saving up their money to make sure they get their Breece Halls, their Travis Etiennes, their Jujus later on in the draft, their George Pickens.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, another tidbit I like to throw in there, because I love auction drafts and I'd rather do auction drafts than snake drafts. But in the Gods League, we got we're transitioning that to a snake draft just because we want more people coming in and whatnot. So I take this approach when it comes to auction drafts, and it really depends on the league, right? Like, if you know that there is, it's a league maybe of people that you may not, maybe like a newer league or whatnot, and they're doing an auction draft. I may be more aggressive and I may be more aggressive early on. Let's say if there's somebody out there that I like. And the reason why I say that is because you're going to have a lot of people not knowing how to bid or not knowing how the draft's going to go early on. So you can definitely get some good values. Like, let's say if you go aggressive in terms of the bidding, like if somebody's bidding like, oh, I'm bidding $1 up on this player, I'm bidding $2 up. If I go, okay, let me go and bid $15 up on this player, still keeping him at a relatively good value, they may see that and be like, well, he's going to waste all his money, right? How many times have we seen that in drafts?
Every time, man. I feel like it's every single draft.
Exactly. Like, you can really come in early, be aggressive, and then have these people think, well, I'll let this person waste his money. And before you know it, you're looking at that person's team and it's like, damn, his team is stacked. And he's got like 3 or 4 top players and still got enough budget to fill out the rest of his roster. You know what I mean? Like, that can happen. I've also seen on the flip side, and this is in a league that is a league that we've been in for a while, like 12 plus years, and everybody is extremely aggressive in this league. I've also seen it work on the flip side where a player is coming in extremely hyped up. Yes. And in this case, it's Clyde Edwards-Hilaire, his rookie year. They reached for him in the first round. Everybody thought he was going to be a stud. He ended up being the highest priced player that year. Crazy.
It was because he was the last running back left too. Like, he was the last running back left. So sometimes position scarcity is also a thing. People overspend when there's position scarcity. So make sure when you have your budget, you're not waiting until the very last second, because chances are there's somebody else who's been waiting as well.
That's facts. That's facts. And that leads me to my next point. I always notice that there are two different types of players when it comes to auction, like two different types of drafters. There are the people who are aggressive, looking to grab up like 2 or 3, top 12 players, top 24 players. And then you got those people who are going to hold on to their budget, and they'll let like the top 12 go, but that just means they'll snatch up 3, 4 second-round players, third-round players, and just kind of have a really balanced and deep draft.
And do you think that's a good strategy? Like, do you think having those balanced strategies can lead to like championships? Do you think that's like a winning strategy? What's your thoughts on kind of holding out and getting a better, like a full team?
It depends on the player you are, right? Like after the draft, like how flexible you are with your team. Because if you take that approach, that's not to say that it's a bad approach. In my experience, that approach doesn't win as much as those people who are being far more aggressive and getting a lot more of those top players in the draft. That's the approach I always like to take. I kind of take a little bit of a little bit of both, but more so heavy on these players. I pinpoint my players that I like, and then I also tend to draft players that I have to trade after. But taking that approach where you're waiting and so that way you have a lot of money and you can outbid everybody else, you get a lot of value in terms of like, third tier and fourth tier players, which is not bad. You can have a really like deep roster and even roster. But when you do that so much and you're having these type of leagues so much, you can really see the types of players that, all these second-rate players that are good, but you can really see the impact on having 2 or 3 studs on your team, because those studs really do carry your team and have these blow-up weeks versus just like consistent production.
Yeah, you got to get those studs. I feel like the studs. And shout out to a stud, Dan. Some shade on that Pickens comment. Man, hey, shout out Pickens, bro. He's been having a hell of a camp, and so it ain't no shade. It's like the hot players. There's always the hot players during training camp. Right now is George Pickens. He's a guy that people are going to reach on, unfortunately. Like he probably will be a $5 to $10 player in auction drafts. He's probably going to go in the top 100 and 120 picks. Like, it's just, that's what happens at times, man, the value. But shout out to the homie Dan, man.
Shout out Dan. Yeah, he's looking at this podcast like George Pickens was looking at the draft.
He'll in the TV. He was in the TV.
Yeah, but
a goon.
But that's another little pinpoint. That's one of the cool things about auction. Like George Pickens, for example, he's killing it in training camp. If you had what I would do if we're having an auction draft today, he'd be one of the first people I put up to auction. And the reason being is I may like him, but I know somebody's going to go and overpay for him, right? Like they're thinking like, okay, he's going to be one of my dollar players I snatch up. Oh man, he's up already. Let me spend $5 on him. Oh damn, somebody spent 6. Let me spend 7. Let me spend 8. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, so you gotta. It just offers a lot of flexibility in that aspect. If you guys haven't tried auction drafts, try them out, man. They're
It's
dope.
My like tidbit in there is to always look for like guys who are injured. Now, a lot of people don't like this strategy. I love this strategy. Guys that are coming off of injury, like Michael Thomas, a lot of people won't want to spend their hard-earned dollar on those guys because they want to save their money for the players that are hot. They won't want to spend money on DeAndre Hopkins because there's concerns you won't get 6 games out of him. Those are guys that I'm looking at. And then also make sure you save money for your dollar players too. Like there's dollar players at the end of the draft, but you also want to have that extra dollar just in case somebody else is looking at them and they run low on their budget. So never be early in the draft or midway through the draft and like have only dollar value left on your auction. You want to be able to at least bid a couple dollars on a player that you're looking at. There's always somebody that falls.
Always somebody that falls.
So I think auction, we covered auction pretty well, yeah?
Yeah, I think so. We got this comment coming in from Corey. How will Sky Moore be involved if there's Juju, MVS, Hartman, and Kelsey? Too many targets to feed.
It's time to get into this Chiefs team, baby.
Yeah, let's do it, man. I mean, it's I could see Sky Moore having a role. I can see him even having a bigger role right now than some of these other players that you even mentioned, right? Like an MVS. I can see him probably having a better role than that. I don't think he's going to fit as like this year. I don't think he's going to be like a wide receiver 3, like somebody you can put in your wide receiver 3 slot. I think he'd be a good bye week player. But let's see how they use him, right? I think I envision them using him similar to how they would use Juju, right? But right now, Juju is going to soak up all those like intermediate targets, all those like those drag routes and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, what do you got, Jay?
No, this is a really good question. I think it kind of segues into what we're going to be talking about. Obviously, AFC West. Let's break down the Chiefs right now. The receiving core. Let's start there. Obviously, this question's here. Mm-hmm. And when you're talking about Pat Mahomes, there are a lot of mouths to feed. Juju, MVS, Hardman, Sky Moore, they're all going to be involved. Travis Kelce, we'll call him a pass catcher in this. He's going to be the alpha, the wide receiver 1 for this team, the main target source for Pat Mahomes. Now, Sky Moore will be involved, but the reason why, and I'm 100% on board with you as far as being a fantasy asset this season, I think he's going to be more of a streaky flex play at best. At best, if he ends up being a flex for you, I think something went very wrong with Juju, MVS, or Hardman. Like something had to have gone wrong. But in real football, he's going to be a plug-and-play guy. He's going to have some run plays called for him. He's going to have some major catches, probably about 4 or 5 touchdowns, somewhere in that 600-700 yard range for receiving yards. I'm buying all of that. So in dynasty leagues, I think he's a better asset than redraft. In redraft, though, P, we got to talk about it. Juju, MVS, Hardman. We've been seeing Juju shine all camp, bro.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it looks like Juju is kind of separating away from that pack, right? Like it looks like from the types of routes that he's running, the highlights that he's getting, and how he's like, it looks like he's developing some chemistry already with Pat. I think of those 3, originally, and we still got to see. There's still some training camp to go and whatnot.
Yeah, of course.
But he looks like he's creating that separation. He looks like he's going to be that number 1 out of just those 3 wide receivers. I still do truly think that Kelce's just leaps and bounds away from all of them. But it looks like that's Juju's that's Juju's to lose at this point.
I see Juju having a very strong season. I'm not buying this as Juju just taking over, though. Like, I think that he'll have some really good blow-up weeks, but I think we can see some of those 3 catches for 50-yard Juju-type games that we saw even in Pittsburgh. Like, he's going to have a game, I think, where he has 8 catches, 150 yards, 2 touchdowns. I could see a game like that. But I could also see some Juju games where he's not as productive because I think Pat Mahomes is going to be spreading it out. He has a lot of weapons now. You talk about MVS. I mean, you can only throw for 400 yards so many games. Like 300 yards is probably the max. And when you're talking Kelce, there's probably only going to be 1 more receiver each game that has a true, really good game outside of Kelce. I think MVS will see some of those games. I think Mikko Hartman will get the ball at times. Sometimes they'll go more heavy on the run. So I don't think Juju is just going to be this super dominant wide receiver 1. Yeah. I think at the value, Mikko Hartman's going the latest out of all of them. And I know you guys don't really like him the same way I do. At the value, I think you can get very similar production without having to pay, top 100 draft capital.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking at like what Tyreek Hill was doing, and Tyreek Hill's a burner. He's extremely fast. That's dope. Juju, Tyreek Hill's a burner, right? But if you look at how he was used so much. Not just deep downfield. He's used on these short routes where he's put in space and, these drag routes and whatnot. Yeah. So I don't think that Juju is going to be used the same way. Juju's a completely different type of receiver. I think that they're going to use a blend of personally Juju as well as MVS to kind of take on those roles. Like I think MVS is going to be there to really keep the secondary honest and keep them deep. Whereas Juju may be getting a lot of those crossing and those drag routes and maybe used a little bit more in the red zone because that's where he specializes in, right? He's a stud in the slot, doesn't really get too much separation like going deep, but that's where you can see MVS flourish. So I agree. I think he has a ceiling of like a ceiling of like a wide receiver too.
Now, last point on the receivers before we get to the running backs. Mikko Hartman, last little tidbit on him. You mentioned him stepping into the Tyreek Hill role. do you think he can fill like the Tyreek Hill role, or are you just saying
I mentioned MVS filling that, like taking the top off, keeping him honest. MVS.
Oh,
not
sorry.
not Mikko.
I thought you said Mikko Hartman in there. So, all right, but
Yeah.
that was kind of like the thing was he was behind Tyreek Hill and that he would be stepping into Tyreek Hill's role. You don't think that happens? You're thinking more so like they break it up between the three receivers.
That's right. And I don't, I don't know if we've ever really even seen flashes of Mikko like stepping up or showing anything. And I know that they needed depth, which is why they made the signings that they did. But it's hard. It's really hard to see where Mikko fits in just with the talent that they brought in. What do you see him doing? Like realistically, like what is his role outside of just another person to maybe get like 3 catches a game?
No, I think he is those deep routes. I think those deep intermediate routes. I think he's going to be involved in kind of some of those run behind the line type pitches, those quick pitches that Andy Reid likes to run. For me, I feel like there's a lot of that he can do. And because of his speed, like that, he brings that Tyreek Hill element even more so than like a Valdez-Scantling does. Valdez-Scantling's more of like a straight line, big body type of speed. Yeah. Whereas Mikko's more of the shifty kind of Tyreek Hill-ish movement type speed. So that's where I think he could flourish. So that was just another point on that. But Clyde Edwards-Hilaire, Ronald Jones, and now Isaiah Pacheco, or however you say his last name. I'm sorry if I butchered it. There's a 4-headed monster there. They also re-signed Jerick McKinnon. So it's like there's a 4-headed monster there in KC. How are you feeling about this backfield right now?
I mean, if I was gonna grab anybody, it would be CEH. But
you would
if I was gonna grab anybody, it would be him. Now, with that being said, I've been waiting on CEH to break out, right? He has high draft capital. He looked great in college, but this is his 3rd year, right?
It's only year 3.
It's only year 3, but like what we've seen from him, there's like I don't see any like breakaway ability. I don't see him being peppered in the receptions department. I don't see I don't see him being utilized on the goal line like that. Like, what really truly is his upside outside of just being on a dominant? Because we've seen Andy Reid and how Andy Reid uses his ideal running backs. Like we've seen Kareem Hunt in that offense.
Right.
Even going back to Philly, we've seen like Brian Westbrook and what he was doing. But like you would think he would be utilized in that fashion, and we just haven't seen it. So at what point are you like, maybe he's not that guy? Like, how many years does it have to be?
To me, it's only his 3rd year, dog. Like, it's only his 3rd year. There's a lot of running backs. There's a lot of players in general in the league that struggle, and he dealt with injuries. He isn't the right type of offense. And the same hype that was there 2 years ago when everybody was like, oh, it's the perfect fit. Andy Reid's offense. He loves to use his running backs. It's legit still there. We saw last year, Darrell Williams had a monster year after CEH got hurt. He was dogging last year. We saw Jerick McKinnon in the playoffs. Dogging, like it's the offense is primed for a running back to play well. And to be honest, when CEH was in there healthy, he was having really good games as well. It's not like he was being top 5 running back status. That's where I think his value has been hurt. Everybody's expecting him still playing off of that rookie year when that guy was like, oh, he could be the number 1 running back in all of fantasy football. Everybody's still living off of that shit. Yeah, that was a dumb thing for him to say. And now his value's cratered. You're getting him in the 8th round. Like, he's one of the last of the starters to go. So I think his value's just been cratered because of that.
Yeah, I mean, I see. I mean, he's going late in drafts, but like, what do you think realistically, like, is a realistic finish for him? Like, give me some yards, give me some touchdowns.
I think if he finished top 15, I wouldn't be surprised if he finishes like a top 15 running back, but he would have to stay healthy the entire season, and he would have to beat out Ronald Jones for the role. And I'm not sure that he does that just early off in the season. So he's been off injured. He's a smaller frame running back. That's his potential, though. If you're asking me like where I think he can finish, I could see him going in the top 15 just with the lack of touchdowns. He's not going to get 10 touchdowns, probably 15 touchdowns. It'll probably be in the 6 to 8 range. So I think the yardage could be there. I think the catches could be there in that offense, especially. It's just a matter of he scored.
Yeah, and going back to kind of what you said about other players, to answer this question, Corey, I would take CEH over Miles Sanders. I'm not
100%.
a fan on Miles Sanders at all.
100%.
You can go ahead and fade him and then feel comfortable with that. If he comes out,
no Miles. Hey, no Miles Sanders. We don't got to talk about him on this show. We don't got to talk about him.
You should call him Meter Sanders or whatnot because he ain't getting no miles, bro. Like, for real, like, nah, bro. But to be real, like, it's watching him like with all the talent that CH has, and then you're seeing like the better back to have would have been the Darrell Hendersons on his team, like the other pass catcher backs, or Darrell Williams, yeah. And I just think that speaks volumes, right? You see, yeah. Give me one quick second.
Yeah. And the cool thing is, bro, like I feel like with the backfield right now, the options that are there, Ronald Jones, Jerick McKinnon, or Isaiah Pacheco, like I don't know if any of those guys overtakes Clyde Edwards-Hilaire. But somebody on that Chiefs roster is going to be valuable, and especially come fantasy playoffs time. Like, you can get Clyde Edwards-Hilaire very late. You can get the other three after the draft. Like somebody on that roster, that's one of those backfields. Like last year, when we talked about the Cardinals with Connor and Chase Edmonds, with the Bucks with Ronald Jones and Fournette last year. That's one of those backfields that come playoff time, fantasy playoff time, you want to have whatever one of those backs is the starter. Like no matter what, one of those guys is going to have good weeks.
And that's the thing, like of those three backs that you've mentioned, I don't have any faith in Jerick McKinnon, right? Because like he was put in great situations and just never showed up. I'm really intrigued
last year.
Yeah, but like I'm really intrigued with Ronald Jones because Ronald Jones, he has the pedigree. He shined in college. He was a high draft pick. And it's not like he can't run. Like, yeah, he may have issues staying healthy, but he has burst. He can hit the hole. He has pretty good vision. And, I mean, they brought him there for a reason, right? Maybe if it's to bring competition to CEH. But I can see that. I see them as very, like, similar, right? And if you could get him after the draft and he has a chance to really, like, win that job, like I would go with him over CEH in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm not high on Ronald Jones, man. I think he had his opportunity in Tampa. Wasn't nothing when he played anyway. Corey shouting out Dan. He said, Dan wanted me to draft Sanders. You better talk to him about that. I thought Dan didn't like Miles Sanders. Dan be flip-flopping.
Dan be a little, yeah.
Flip-flopping, Dan.
Dan be a little.
We gotta talk. We gotta talk to Dan.
Nah,
let's move on to the
Sanders
next team, though, man. We covered. We know what Mahomes is. I think I think Mahomes, there's no drop off just because Tyreek Hill's gone. I think he has same Mahomes type season. Are you feeling the same way about Mahomes before we move on?
I don't have many doubts about Mahomes. It's not Tyreek didn't make Mahomes. You know, if you look at Andy Reid, he's always had high producing quarterbacks no matter where he went. He turned Alex Smith into a QB1. So all the trust in Mahomes. We're good.
Bet. Well, let's get on to our next team. Let's make it official and put it up on the board. The LA Chargers. Gotta talk about the LA Chargers, man. Los Angeles Chargers. Obviously, this team is fireworks. We saw them last year. Justin Herbert taking that next step as a quarterback. He was already phenomenal his rookie year. Settled in nicely in his sophomore campaign. But you expecting much of the same from Justin Herbert.
Bro, like I'm extremely high on Justin Herbert. I'm taking Justin Herbert over Pat Mahomes. And I would not be surprised if Justin Herbert finishes as the QB1. I wouldn't be surprised.
Are you excited, huh?
Bro, I rock with Herbert, bro. Like I really think that in a few years this is going to be Herbert's league, right? Like if you think about it, he has all the talent. I mean, you can smirk, right? Feel free.
I'm gonna smirk. I'm about to turn that to shit real quick. Go ahead.
I'm trying to tell you. Listen, he has all of the talent, right? He has he has weapons, right? And it would be better, honestly, if he had if his weapons were a little bit more fluid. Like it seems like Mike Williams is a one-trick pony, kind of like a deep shot type guy.
Yeah.
And then Keenan Allen is like work in the middle. I wish that they were more fluid, but a sneaky signing that they did was Gerald Everett at the tight end. And you could look for him to be a really like sleeper tight end because they target the tight end in the red zone. They target Mike Evans in the red zone. But another thing that is really underlooked, right?
About
his
Herbert?
Just about his situation. His head coach loves to go for it on fourth down, right? And that just gives them more opportunities if they convert. Now, the fact that they have a defense, because their biggest issue on that team was the fact that teams average like 5.5, 6 yards a carry on them because they had somebody that was my size in the fucking interior defensive line. So, yeah. So, I mean, like, they're, now they got Khalil Mack over there. You know what I'm saying? They're coming back healthy. That's just going to give them more opportunities, right? So if you got his coach willing to take chances, you can see what he did in that Raiders game where they almost made the playoffs if it wasn't for a timeout. But
almost doesn't count.
Almost don't. You ain't lying. But with him having more opportunities, like let's say 5, 6, 7 more possessions just this season overall based off of that defense, like what can he do with that? Right? Like I think he's in for a bigger year.
So this is where I extremely disagree with you. And hear me out, right? That defense is actually going to be the thorn in Justin Herbert's side now because last season they had no defense. Their defense was one of the worst defenses in the league, right? They were in high-scoring games nearly every game. All their games were 45-44, like 35-34. There was a ton of opportunity for Justin Herbert to pass the rock around. No injuries to the team. Like Eckler stayed healthy all season. Keenan Allen stayed healthy all season. Everything was thumbs up for Justin Herbert last year. Now the defense is going to be a lot better with Khalil Mack, J.C. Jackson added as a corner. Like there's going to be a big defensive impact. I don't see the Chargers needing to score as much. They don't need to throw the ball as much. A lot of that's going to be, hey, let's pound the clock out because if the Chargers are going to take this leap that they're taking a leap that everybody's expecting them to take, that means they're going to be winning more games, more football games. That also means we're scaling back the passing. We're going to increase the rushing, which is why they got Isaiah Spiller. So to me, I think Austin Eckler's production goes down just a little bit. I think all the Chargers receivers go down just a little bit. And Justin Herbert's production goes down, just his upside goes down just a little bit.
Bro, like think about the 6 teams he has to play twice a year, or the 3 teams he has to play twice a year. 6 games. Which one of those teams are letting up?
It's not about letting up. It's just the defense is going to talking
about like he has to play KC twice, right?
KC, the Denver, and Vegas.
And it seems like all of those teams right now are stacked offensively, right? So even if you do have a 2-score lead, you can see how fast 2-score leads can evaporate against KC.
But that's 6 out of 17 games though.
Bruh, like who they're playing the NFC West too?
Exactly.
Right?
Defense. That's going to be defensive matchups.
Brother, they're playing the Rams. Firepower on offense. They're playing the Niners. They're going to be nice on offense. Bruh, what do you mean that's not how it works? Like, listen, I could see if their head coach was like more of a traditional head coach to do that, but you see him taking his chances, and it's not because you see him going for it on fourth down even when they're up. He's one of those guys who plays the percentages like, it's about a 60% chance we get this fourth down. I'm going for it.
Now, I don't think Herbert's going to be like bad. I'm not saying that. But do I think he's going to be throwing for over 5,000 yards this year? That's where I don't think is going to happen. He could have more touchdowns. I could even see that. I can see Herbert having more touchdowns. But that upside you talk about it being QB1, to me, I just don't see it at all. Receivers. Are you higher on Keenan Allen or Mike Williams? So I guess we can transition into receivers. And Keenan Allen versus Mike Will, man. Talk about it, man, because this is a pretty popular thing right now, a hot button topic. A lot of people are expecting Mike Williams to take that leap over Keenan Allen to become the dog there. I had Mike Williams last year in one league, and then I've had Keenan Allen last year in another league, right? So I got a really close look at them. And rubbing shoulders with him and shit.
We was in there, bro. I was like, yo, Keenan, you gonna do something today?
I was talking to him.
I was calling plays, baby. I was calling plays. but no, to keep it real, I think it's a lot closer than what people would like to admit, right? Like I think it is closer. And the reason is like I think Keenan's going to get peppered with targets between the 20s, right? Yep. I think he's going to get peppered with targets. Whereas I see the chunk plays in red zone targets coming from Mike Williams, right?
So same thing as last year. It's same thing as last year for you. Nothing really changes.
I don't think much changes because that's who these players are. Like Keenan's not going to all of a sudden be like, oh, I got 16 touchdowns. Or he's not going to be like, oh, I'm now a red zone threat. That's just not who he is. I mean, Keenan's been in the league. Was he 29, almost 30? Yeah. He is who he is at this point, right? Mike Williams is the one who we're seeing kind of take the next step, finally take this next step. Big body guy. He's really a jump ball guy who fits Herbert more better than like a Keenan. Like Keenan has his role carved out. Hey, I got this first down, don't trip. But as far as fantasy purposes, you're gonna see a lot of like 16, 17 point games from Keenan consistently. Whereas Mike Williams, you're gonna see those blow up games, and then you're gonna see some duds.
Yeah, I feel like Keenan Allen to me is the guy that you want on your team more so than Mike Williams. Mike Williams is going to have a couple blow up weeks, 4 or 5 weeks over 25 points. Like that's just who he is, and you just better hope one of those comes during or two of them come during fantasy playoffs. Because what we've seen during Mike Williams his whole career, he's been a wide receiver 3. That's who he's been. So to expect
outside of last year.
Last year was his best year, but he had also one of the best starts he's had in his career. I mentioned it on TikTok. He had 120 points in his first 5 games out of his 240 points in PPR formats. So to me, that said a lot about his early production, which I think he was like a top 2 receiver in that time as well. So to me, I'm not buying it. I think that he had I'm not hating on the numbers because over the course of a whole season, you want that production. You can't hate on the numbers. But for me, I'm higher on Keenan Allen because I know what to expect, and I feel like his floor is very safe there. Are there any other receivers you're looking at? Josh Palmer, Jalen Guyton are options there. Gerald Everett, obviously, as the tight end. Are you buying any of these other options for receivers for the Chargers?
Me, typically, I like to go as far as the other receivers, like wide receivers. I just don't think that there's enough bandwidth for them. As far as
Herbert's 5,000, he's 5,000. He's QB1. There's no other bandwidth for these guys.
You got to think a lot of those receiving yards also came from Eckler as well, right? Like, so he's going to be taking a big chunk. And I do think as far as the players you named, the person I'm most high on is Everett. Personally, I like to reach for a top tight end. Now, if the draft just falls the way that it does and I don't get one of them, he would be one of those players that I target late.
What makes you think Gerald Everett's going to be anything special this year? He's even in Seattle, he was never anything. Like he was always one of those guys like Irv Smith. Oh, he's going to be breaking out this year. He has all this talent in the world. Pete Carroll was talking about, oh, we got to get him involved. And then he didn't do shit the times that he did. It's all talk and shit. What makes you think that this is the year for Gerald Everett now?
Well, I mean, tight ends have never really been that big in Seattle anyway, right? Like that's just not what they do. Like, what's his name can talk all the shit he wants to talk, but in LA, the Chargers, they rock with the tight ends, right? Like
Jared Cook was mid. Jared Cook was mid the year before.
Jared Cook was not as mid as people think, but like, but think about like they have. Jared Cook was serviceable as a tight end, as a late tight end. You could even get him undrafted, right? You got Gerald Everett there now. I mean, before Gerald Everett, the dude who went to the Patriots,
Hunter
Henry. He was getting a lot of red zone looks. Like he was getting a lot of touchdowns, right? And with Herbert in his rookie year, and they're bringing on a tight end for that reason, right? So he's somebody who does have upside at probably a really, really cheap price of all those late round tight ends. He's the one that would stick out for me.
Yeah, he's a dart throw for sure. Before we get into the running backs for the Chargers, Austin Eckler, Isaiah Spiller, real quick question. Thoughts on CPAT in Atlanta? I'll go ahead and take this one. I think CPAT is what you expected, what you saw last year in the second half, probably more so than the first half. The touchdowns are going to go to Kyle Pitts. They're going to go to Drake London this year. The offense is going to change. So I think that CPAT will have a role. Just expect more like flex production on bye weeks as opposed to like every week RB2.
Yeah, 100%.
But the running backs for the Chargers, real quick before we get to the Denver Broncos, Austin Eckler, and let's make this real quick. The Austin Eckler, Isaiah Spiller thing. We've been seeing Isaiah Spiller take RB1 reps in training camp. Does that concern you at all? Or are you like, nah, full systems go for Austin Eckler?
It didn't concern me at all. I mean, they're doing that. He's taking first team reps, but otherwise, like the way that they run in the middle, like you can't expect Eckler's little ass to continue to pound it up the middle. They drafted that back for a reason. They tried that last year with the other backs that they had as well, and they were just not effective, right? Like they just were duds. But I mean, I expect him to get carries. I expect him to probably even see some looks in the goal line, but that's fully to keep Austin Eckler healthy, right? Yeah. Like Austin Eckler cannot take that much of a pounding. I don't see it impacting his receiving numbers, which is where the primary production does come from. I don't think Eckler is going to have 20 touchdowns like he did last year.
No, there ain't no way.
Yeah, but I don't think I think you still gotta launch him out there as a top 5 running back.
I don't think you got to put him as top 5 because Eckler. I mean, before last season was the outlier by far. He wasn't even getting double-digit touchdowns before last season, and to me, they're going to make some point to reduce his workload. That's obvious with bringing in Isaiah Spiller this year. It's obvious that last year was too much of a workload. We saw him get banged up towards the end of last year. I think they want to keep him fresh. This Chargers team, I mentioned it, they're trying to make the playoffs. Like when you think about that for fantasy purposes, when teams have different goals, you have to kind of start to tinker with your fantasy rankings. This Chargers team is trying to make the playoffs and go for a championship run, and it's useless without Austin Eckler in the playoffs. We saw him get banged up towards the end of last year. I don't think they want to see a repeat of that. Isaiah Spiller has a little bit of upside. It's not necessarily concerning. I'm not like, oh, he got first team reps. It's going to be a 50-50 split. But I do think that Isaiah Spiller is going to be have more of a role than people think. Think Melvin Gordon last year to Javonte Williams. I think that's what we can end up seeing towards the end of the year.
No, because Melvin Gordon and Javonte Williams last year were like a 50-50 split.
I'm thinking more like 60-40.
You thinking 60-40?
60-40.
So where do you think Austin Eckler finishes then, like in terms of like running back rankings?
Bottom end RB1, high end RB2. Where he was supposed to be finishing.
Tripping, dog. Come on, son.
That's where I got him. The thing is, last year you were drafting him at that same spot. You were drafting, and you saw the upside with Austin Eckler, even with the pass catching. You saw the upside, but I genuinely think that Isaiah Spiller is going to come take some of those red zone touches. And if Austin Eckler is not getting those TDs this year, he's going to be a back end RB1.
Okay, I could respect that.
That's where I got it. You still got him top 5?
Yeah, I got it. Yeah,
top 2. Top 2, not 2.
I ain't got him top 2, not 2, bro. I ain't got him top 2. Let me ask you something, though.
Yeah, go ahead.
Who you taking, Eckler or Saquon?
See, if I'm drafting, you know what I'm saying?
Nah, bro, who's going to finish better? Who's going to finish better is my question.
Eckler probably finished better. Saquon, they have the same potential. Saquon has more potential, though. I think there's more of a probability Austin Eckler finishes higher.
You see,
but it would not surprise me.
You got to pick one, bro.
I'm picking Eckler to finish better than Saquon Barkley, but I'm drafting Saquon Barkley at his ADP every time over Austin Eckler.
I could rock with that. Did you see Saquon run through that DB in practice?
I know you saw that.
I think he's back, bro. I think he's back.
You know what? I'm changing my answer right now. Within 30 seconds, Saquon, bro. He's finishing better than Eckler, man. Get out of here. Little ass Eckler. We're moving on to the Denver Broncos, man.
Yeah.
And we got to talk about the receivers first, man. I think we know what Russ is going to be. Unless you want to talk about Russ, I feel like he's still back in QB1, a little bit of upside, nothing more than that. We'll talk about the running backs in just a second. But the hot topic for the Denver Broncos, Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton. It's what everybody wants to know. Who's the next Cooper Kupp? And who's going to be the number 1 for the Broncos? Man, I think this might be probably our most contested section that we have of this show, man. Talk about Cortland Sutton so I can shoot you down in every aspect.
Oh, okay. All right. So Cortland Sutton, bro, like that's who I think is going to come out on top, right? And it's weird, right? Because it's not weird, but people think of Russ as this elite, crazy quarterback, like a free Russ. Like Russ is he's good, right? But he's not the upper echelon. a lot of his plays are made with him scrambling outside of the pocket, right? And then kind of throwing that deep ball, putting it in the breadbasket. He has elite ball placement on the deep ball, but who is going to benefit from that? Who is going to benefit from that? It's going to be Sutton. That's who he is, right? Like, I'm not saying Jerry Jeudy's not going to be in a role, but if you're comparing them to like a DK and a Tyler Lockett, I can see Jerry Jeudy filling in that Tyler Lockett role, whereas a DK role is going to be more Sutton, right? So that, I mean, it's apparent. Like you can see where Russell Wilson targets like the heat map on where primary or like all of his production comes from. It's on the outside on deep, right? It's very rarely you're going to see him peppering the middle where Jerry Jeudy lives.
I just don't agree with that because we've seen.
How could you not agree with that though?
So DK is a one of a kind receiver. So I think the easy thing to do is be like, okay, let's compare it to Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf. It's different because DK Metcalf was clearly a better talent than Tyler Lockett. I don't think there's any question in anybody's mind. DK Metcalf was a better receiver than Tyler Lockett. So hence the reason why he went to DK Metcalf more, especially in the red zone. Now, Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton is different because Jerry Jeudy is damn near a better receiver than Cortland Sutton. When they've been on the field at the same time, Jerry Judy's outproduced him. Now, when you talk about Russell Wilson in the connection, Russ had Doug Baldwin looking like a 1,500-yard receiver. It doesn't matter the size when it comes to Russ. I think it matters the talent, and he's going to find the talent that makes him look best. There's a reason why we're seeing that Jerry Jeudy-Russ connection happening in training camp so often.
Yeah, and I get that point, but if you're looking at where he targets primarily, that's where Sutton lives. He does not like even the Doug Baldwins, even the Tyler Lockett's, right? Like those Tyler Lockett's are breaking down deep. And I'm not saying that Jeudy can't do that, but Judy's role is going to be cutting it up in the middle. And Sutton is going to be winning those jump balls, those deep balls.
Yeah,
and,
but then he almost fills that Tyler Lockett role more so than what you're saying. Even you're comparing DK, because you're saying the deep balls that Tyler Lockett is on for the Seattle. If you're comparing them right now, you're comparing Cortland Sutton to what Tyler Lockett's supposed to be, because Tyler Lockett was running those deep routes in Seattle.
No,
you got them switched up right now.
No, I don't, bro. Like
you
the deep. No, I don't, bro. Like the fact is, whoever's running those right, like it's not DK cutting it up in the middle. It's not DK shaking motherfuckers and like eating in the middle of the field, just leaving receivers. Like it's not that. Whoever it is, if it's Baldwin, if it's Baldwin, if it's Lockett, if it's DK, he's hitting them in the outside zone, that deep zone. And that, in my opinion, is where Cortland Sutton eats out of these two receivers.
Fair enough.
So
fair enough.
Yeah.
But I see, I get you. I hear your point. But Judy's that guy. I got Jerry Jeudy finishing as the dog, the wide receiver one in this offense, but it's not by much. So I think when P and I are going back and forth on Sutton and Jeudy, we're both expecting them to have big seasons. Like I know I'm probably speaking for you and I don't need to, but I expect Jerry Jeudy to have a big season. I expect Cortland Sutton to have a big season. I just expect Jerry Jeudy's season to be bigger when it comes to yardage and receptions. I think Cortland Sutton will probably have the more touchdowns, but the receiver you're going to want, Jerry Jeudy's probably going to have somewhere between 80 to 100 catches. He's going to be in that 1,200-yard range and that 6 to 8 touchdown range. I think he has a monster season for the Broncos.
So it's crazy because like they're both going like very, very close to one another, right?
Because nobody knows. It was like Cooper Kupp and Russ and Robert Woods last year. They were the same job position.
Yeah, I could rock.
It all matters on you know what? We can talk about this all we want. It matters on the field. Game one, week one, who is Russ vibing with? And only he has the answer to that right now. There's no offense that dictates it. You know what I'm saying? Like sometimes it's just a connection. I've been seeing the reason why I go hard for Jeudy too is because the same things we saw last year with Cooper Kupp and Matt Stafford chilling together, eating lunch together. You've been seeing a lot of that with Jerry, Jeudy, and Russ. And sometimes Trey Lance and Ayuk, sometimes you can just see a connection brewing, man.
Yeah, okay. I could rock with that. I could respect that.
Real quick before we get into running backs, will Travis Etienne produce RB2 numbers, P?
Yeah, he will. I think he will. And I mean, if you look at what they're doing over there, the type of offense that they like to run in that head coach, what they did in Philly, the pass catching RB was producing, wide receiver or running back 2 numbers, right? Like they target them a lot. That's their safety blanket. It is heavily the pass catching RB and the slot wide receiver that really puts up numbers over there. So yeah, he's locked in as an RB2.
Yeah, he's starting to climb a little bit though.
Yeah, he's starting to climb a little too much, man.
I don't know about that.
Like he's starting to climb.
There's still a little bit of
bit.
question marks. Everybody want to throw him in that RB1 potential top 5 combo. I'm not there with Travis Etienne yet, man.
No. Yeah, I'm telling you like this: if you got a decision between Travis Etienne and somebody who's fallen like Zeke, you better be taking Zeke.
Take Zeke. 100%.
You better be taking Zeke.
Don't just reach for the upside.
Yeah.
So Javonte and Melvin Gordon, man. Let's talk about that before we move on to the Las Vegas Raiders, who will be the last team that we talk about today. Obviously, Javonte Williams was supposed to be unlocked this year. Russ threw a wrench in that. Melvin Gordon re-signing threw a wrench in that. Obviously, there's still a lot of high expectation for Javonte Williams. He's going as a top 12 running back right now. Melvin Gordon is part of the fold. How are you viewing this backfield? Because there's a lot of people who think it's Javonte Williams season, SZN, Javonte Williams season. And then there's also a lot of people who are like, are we forgetting what Melvin Gordon was and the impact he had on the team last year and what he's been in his career?
Yeah. Like as far as that, like a lot of people are, a lot of people are saying, oh, Melvin Gordon re-signed. Oh, we've seen what they did last year. Oh, it was like a 50-50 split. Listen, the far better talent is Javonte Williams, and they have a new regime, right? It's a homie came over from Green Bay where they did run a 2-back system. Hackett came over from Green Bay and they did run a 2-back system, but you're going to see the talent shine out. Right? Like you're going to see it shine out. Melvin Gordon is, for what he is, he's good with volume, but he's not the talent that Javonte Williams. So I'm not scared of Melvin Gordon. He may be somebody that I would grab late if I'm like light on RBs, but I think there's huge upside that you don't want to get FOMO on if you pass up on a Javonte Williams because you're afraid of Melvin Gordon.
Yeah, and we've seen Hackett. He doesn't really lean on one back like that. Like that's not. I think what we're looking at with Javonte Williams is that his upside is going to be capped because that's Russell Wilson's offense. Make no mistake about it. It's going to be Russell Wilson's offense. He's going to be passing the ball a lot more. And to me, I think Javonte is going to have a nice floor, a very nice floor.
Mm-hmm.
Top 15 running back for sure. Doesn't really have the top 5 upside. So unless he just somehow got a lot of touchdowns in the red zone, which I don't see, I could see them using Melvin Gordon as a change of pace back, switching drives, unfortunately. Like for Javonte Williams' value, it could be all bad. Melvin Gordon's going to get more touches. They re-signed him for a reason. They didn't re-sign him just to not play. So I know that it was a 50-50 split last year, 55-45 probably. And it'll probably more of a 60. Yeah, it would be probably more of a 65-35 split this year. So we can see Javonte have a much stronger season. But Melvin Gordon is still going to be in the fold. And if Javonte gets a questionable tag here and we see a couple like Melvin Gordon could have more value, I think, than people think in the same, very similar role to what he had last year.
Okay.
My guy Dexter said, appreciate it, fellas. Yes, sir. You know we about. If y'all got questions, get them in. We got one more segment, and then me and P are off for tonight. Yeah. We're going to talk about the Raiders, man. Raiders. Yeah, we're going to talk about these Raiders, bro, because there's a lot of talent on this team, man. And unfortunately, they're probably the worst team in the division. I don't mean that in a bad way either. It's just they probably are the worst team in the division, even with Devontae Adams, Darren Waller, Hunter Renfrow, Derek Carr, Josh Jacobs. Like the names are there. It's just – I don't know. It's a tough division. So how are you feeling about Derek Carr this year? Because he's got all the weapons. We've seen him be pretty productive. You feel like there's a lot of talk about how Derek Carr can outplay his ADP. You buying it?
Oh, 100%. I'm buying that shit, man. Derek Carr last year. Listen, man, Derek Carr last year was producing throughout the first 5-6 games. He was leading the league in passing yards and in touchdown. And that often gets overlooked until his weapons started to get hurt. Derek Carr is no punk when it comes to this. You know what I mean? Like we're looking at right now, Russell Wilson, we're looking at Herbert, we're looking at Pat Mahomes, and then you kind of it's easy to brush off Derek Carr. No, I could see him easily having a top 10 quarterback, a top 10 season in fantasy, right? Maybe top 12, but I could see him being a QB1 definitely. I wouldn't sleep on him at his ADP. I would even, if I'm if I'm waiting on quarterback, he would be somebody that I do target. I think he's going to be really nasty. I think he's going to be nice. Yeah, I mean, I love Derek Carr.
I think Derek Carr is what he is. He's like Kirk Cousins to me, and he's going to throw for 302 touchdowns a lot of games. Like, even with Davante Adams there, it's just that's the nature of the way he plays. He's not a 500-yard, like, ceiling type guy in a game. He's not a 5,000-yard passer. Derek Carr has never been a top 10 quarterback in his career, and I don't necessarily see that changing. It's kind of like Kirk Cousins to me. I don't necessarily think that he's just going to take this major leap because they got Davante Adams. And I think part of what you're missing with Derek Carr is that rushing upside that most of the top 10 QBs have. Now, you got your Brady's, you got your Joe Burrows, you got your your Aaron Rodgers. To me, Derek Carr is behind all those guys, and he doesn't run the ball a whole lot. So to me, unless something changes and he's throwing for 40 touchdowns, 35, 40 touchdowns, which, shit, it could be a possibility, right? I'm not taking Derek Carr. Like, at his ADP, I'd rather have Trey Lance. Trey Lance is going around the same range. So I don't necessarily see the same upside.
I think Trey Lance is going a little higher, right? I mean, if last
year 12 and 13 right now with ADP, 12 and 13.
Okay, but if last year, do you know how many yards he threw last year? Derek Carr off the top?
4,500.
4,800.
4,800.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and that's with a lot of his weapons hurt. Right now, there is a whole new offense being implemented there. Right. Yeah. I think it's going to be a lot more short passing, more high, high percentage throws being thrown there. So I can see that, but I do think he's underrated. And in comparison to, who I think is overrated out of all four of these players, these quarterbacks. Yeah. I think it's Russell Wilson, who's probably the most overrated. Right.
Now, I hear you with that, but there's one thing that Russ does a lot differently to Derek Carr that I think has kept Derek Carr's value in the teens. There's one thing specifically, and that's Russ don't turn the ball over at the same rate that Derek Carr does. Derek Carr throws a lot of interceptions, and in fantasy, that does tend to hamper your value. Like, the difference between him and Aaron Rodgers may not be touchdowns, it may not be yards, but it damn sure is going to be interceptions because we know that Aaron Rodgers don't throw none. So, and they're going very similar rates. So I can see Derek Carr maybe even throwing for more yards or having more touchdowns. It's just that the volume, especially you mentioned with Josh McDaniels' offense, at the volume, Derek Carr just tends to throw a little bit too much interceptions to get him in that top 10 range. That's the only reason I could see him like not producing at a higher level. There's other guys I'd rather have with more upside.
Okay.
But when it comes to the receivers, though, obviously, Davante Adams, rock solid, wide receiver one, elite tier, wide receiver one. Hunter Renfrow among the elite when it comes to wide receiver twos in the games, and then Darren Waller's among the elite when it comes to tight ends. How are you feeling about this receiving crew?
I think it's nice, right? I think it's good. And for the record, right, like, I like Davante Adams. I just like, four other wide receivers better than him. The person who I think is going to take the biggest hit is, in my opinion, obviously Darren Waller, right? So yeah. He's not the number one guy there anymore. We see in his production as a number one option. Dope. You know what I mean? Like, but he's not there anymore. He's got a target hog there. And
you're not that guy, pal. You're not that guy.
Not that guy, buddy. You're not that guy. But yeah, I mean, like, he's getting a little longer in the tooth. He's getting older. You're starting to see like some of that wear on him last year. I really think Hunter Renfrow is going to flourish in this offense. This offense is like made for Hunter Renfrow. I think he's going way too low in drafts. I mean, he's going to fill that Edelman role, that Eckler role, and he's going to do it, at a high rate. So,
so you said going too low in drafts. You mean guys like, because Hunter Renfrow's going like picks 60, 70, somewhere in that range. Are you taking him over like the Rashad Batemans, the Allen Lazards, the Marquise Hollywood Brown guys? Like, is that who you're taking him over?
I would take him over Marquise Hollywood Brown. I'm really high on Rashard Bateman, and I'm also really high on Lazard's my doubt.
Yeah. But that's the range. Like that's the range he's going in. So you would take like if we were doing Hunter Renfrow versus Hollywood Brown, you're taking Renfrow over Hollywood Brown.
I'm taking Renfrow over Hollywood Brown. Yes.
A lot of people got Hollywood Brown in like they top 15, bro. I seen him on he's flying up boards. I seen him in the top 12 before.
Oh my God. Yeah, I mean he's I don't know. He's not gonna be no top 12. Brad, like you gotta look at it like this. He was shining early on last year because he was the only option. He was also shining last year because they had no other choice but to throw the rock more often in Baltimore. Not only was Lamar hurt, all the running backs were hurt. They had trash at running backs. They had to throw to somebody. That's why you've seen a real boost in his value. You've seen also a real boost in the tight ends value over there. Now that he goes to an up-tempo offense, yeah, I can see him continuing something similar, but there's also going to be a target monster coming back in Arizona week 7, right? Yeah. So, and that division is stacked in terms of secondaries, right? At least the Niners and the Rams. He's probably going to toast Seattle, but like even in his upside over there, I think his upside is like 1,106.
We could do it. If he's lucky. 1,100 if he's lucky. We could do a whole segment. We need to do a Hollywood Brown versus everybody, like Hunter Renfrow, Alan Lazard. Get that on the next episode.
That's
going to get chopped up. We got to chop that up and put that on the page too, bro. Straight up.
Facts.
Yeah, but to me, Davante Adams is locked in. There's a lot of people. I'm gonna do a we do not care about this. There's a lot of people worried about Davante Adams. They say he has question marks in Vegas. Obviously, with the new system, there's other competition for targets. Derek Carr, you know what I'm saying? For all he hasn't proven that he can support that many weapons before ever. And so we have to see that from him too. So there are some question marks with Davante Adams, but I still think he's elite. And I still think that he's 120, 100 catch guy, somewhere in that range, 1,500 yards, 10 to 15 touchdowns. Like Davante Adams is just the best receiver in football for a reason. So, and him and Carr had that connection, bro. Like it's not just they went to the same school. They were elite together at the same school. So
yeah. That
does it for the AFC West, man. We went through it pretty well. Any thoughts? Any parting thoughts on that? We miss anything?
Nah, man. You know what? We didn't talk about the Raiders running backs. I would say, I was talking to a diehard Raiders fan, my brother-in-law, and he was kind of breaking it down because I was like, yo, why did they pull Josh Jacobs' contract? He was like, outside of Hunter Renfrow, everybody who was up for contract right now, they didn't offer them a contract.
New regime.
Yeah, it is a new regime. It's like they're doing the wait and see feel. So I may have been a little too harsh on Josh Jacobs for that. But even with that being said, it's Mike McDaniels that's bringing in that. Josh McDaniels might be Josh McDaniels that's bringing in all the running backs that you can never guess who's going to start.
RBBC.
Yeah, and it's Zamir White at his value, I would grab him. But I'm really, I like what they're doing over there in Oakland, and I don't see them finishing last. Let me just say that.
Yeah. Hold on a second. Before I get to you, got the Broncos in last?
I do think I don't know, man. I don't think the Raiders going to fit. No, bro. I'm being real, man. Like, hey.
It's not the Chargers, it's not the Chiefs. So you got the Broncos in last.
Listen, bro.
You don't have the Chiefs in last.
No, I don't have the Chiefs in last.
I was about to. Oh my God! I would have raged. I'd have took the extra time to rage right now,
man. I really do think that. I think the Chiefs are going to finish first. It's a mix-up, right? And I'm going to think of that a little bit more. But I don't think. Listen, I think the odd man out is the Broncos, and that's just being real.
All right, we'll talk about that another time. But to me, this running back situation, you mentioned it, running back by committee. Yeah. I'm not really touching Josh Jacobs. Even if he's there kind of around that Clyde Edwards Hilaire, I'm going to wait and grab Hilaire the round after that. I'm going to wait and grab a different running back later. I'm just not buying Josh Jacobs for what he is. I think that he's on his 5th-year option. The team is going to try him out, use him. He's been off injured in his career. They have Amir Abdullah, Zamir White, Kenyon Drake, I don't think any of those guys is anything special, but what they are is a threat to Josh Jacobs' touches. That's all I see it as, and it doesn't matter because Josh McDaniels is going to ride the hot hand. So it's not like any of those guys are just so much – they're really a threat to take over a starting role. I just think it's fluid when it comes to the Raiders' running game.
Yeah, that's facts. So somebody you may want to stay away from. So
yeah, well, facts. Well, that does it for this episode. P, any parting thoughts, bro? We good?
Nah, man, we good, man. Just follow us on our pages. You guys know who we are. You know, I mean, you guys keep tapping in, showing all that love you guys do to the Fantasy Gods page. Check us out on Twitter. Tap into the YouTube as well. Show some love there. But outside of that, man, we always appreciate you guys. And yeah, man, we out, man. Another good show.